Triple Zeros. I am Josh Buckalter. Follow me on Twitter at Josh G Buck. Hit up the Facebook page at Clocker Sports, the website clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Got a lot to talk about, man. Not a lot of time to do it in, but that's usually the case. We got to talk about prominent football player could be on the move after doing a lot of, towing the line this past season, and then the NFL might not be going abroad. We also got to talk about an NBA player hoping to make his return and a coach who could be resurfacing in a new city. But we got to start off this episode talking about The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary documenting their final championship run. Really, it's been about the entire run. I know they call it The Last Dance, but there's been a lot of bouncing around. And that's not a complaint. That's just an observation that maybe The Last Dance wasn't the best title because they've been covering a lot of ground from going back into their childhood, but they've really been covering the first championship run as well, three-peat. So that's been fun to watch. But this past week, we got to see some more of I call it the more fallible side of MJ, in that the gambling in episode 6, but before that, episode 5, you also got to see the pettiness, right? You saw the dream team coming together and him deny the questions about Isaiah and the freeze out and all those kind of things. And I think really, I said it when it first started, there wasn't going to be much that surprised me coming out about any of this. It is interesting to see it documented like in real time and what the emotions were then. You could tell that there was definitely a beef there, but you could also see that I don't think it was a bad thing necessarily. You see a lot of people complaining right now on social media, especially about how one side or the other, no matter who it is really, they're super petty for not letting this go, or they can't own up to doing this, or they should have done that. And in the handshake situation, at least, who cares? Honestly, I think it's really great that there's still this animosity between these two players, and it's taken such a dramatic turn into this situation, or into not a dramatic turn, I'm sorry, but it's gone on so long, rather, right? A lot of people would say, how can two grown men really hold on a grudge for this long? I said it last time, you don't really know grown men that well. So that was one thing that I think coming along this way is not really surprising to me, seeing a lot of the pettiness, but seeing that pettiness be extended to an incoming teammate was interesting. Now, again, this is another one of those things that wasn't surprising because I knew about it already. But seeing it and then watching them put their words and their feelings about it, set that to video, to game film, that's what was interesting to me. Tony Kukoc, playing for, what was it, Yugoslavia at the time, the Croatian coming out from Europe, a major acquisition from the Bulls. Jerry Krause had likened him as the future of the franchise. He's a very accomplished player, very good player, but during that dream team run, they had to make him, make him aware that he was coming into a whole different animal, and that was what Scotty and Mike set out to do. And you heard from the horse's mouth that, you leave him to me and Scotty, because they were trying to send a message to Jerry Krause that, he wasn't the next anything. He was going, if anything, he was going to come over there and help them out. And that's another thing. The mentions of Krause, or really things that motivated Mike and how those things were connected to Krause, is kind of fascinating to me. He talked about if he heard the guy that Jerry liked, he would make it a point to go and bust their tail. Dan Marley talked about it in the finals against Phoenix, how Marley was on him, and he just, he made it his mission to go out there and put on a show against him because he knew that Jerry liked him. Those type of things are wonderful to see put in real time context, because again, during that first run, I was a child, so I didn't really get to understand any of the nuance of any of it, or really the ins and outs, and see or have any type of understanding of what that could possibly be about. But now getting to see it, and I had a Charles Barkley t-shirt, Sir Charles coming through a frame, so seeing a round mound of rebound, svelte round mound of rebound, which is funny because he was a round mound before he was even round at that point. But seeing him going off, and forcing the Bulls forcing Mike really to go out there and dog him. He said it himself. He's like, I made certain that we weren't going to lose. I did my very best to make sure that we didn't lose, and Mike outplayed him. And he said that was the first time rather, he felt like legitimately like there was somebody who was better at basketball than he was. And that was, again, I think I was in about third grade at that point in time. And I just remember from that run, I remember hating Kevin Johnson. But I liked Charles because he was just everywhere. He did a little bit of everything, and it just didn't look right because he was, short, stocky. I wouldn't call him fat at that point, but he wasn't the regularly built guy. He wasn't the typical athlete that you would see. So he was always a trip for me. But of course, I was always rooting for the Bulls because that was the hometown squad. But that was just one of the many aspects that I found interesting was how many times Mike said he made it a mission to go out there and prove a Jerry favorite to be inadequate. Tony Kukoc, Dan Marley, when he traded Charles Oakley for Bill Cartwright, there's a story about Ramona Shelburne talking about how petty Mike is actually. And when he did it, Mike would call Bill Cartwright medical bill because of his injury problems. And he would throw him hard passes to prove that he didn't have good hands. Things like that. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you expect, right? But to hear those kind of detailed stories, I think, adds to the lore and kind of fuels the fire. Now, before it all began, Mike said that he was kind of worried about people's perception of him when all this came out. And the director actually is quoted as saying, he can't believe Mike approved the next 2 episodes, so who knows what's about to come out. I'm imagining he's got to do something with his father. That's one of the things that I've been kind of looking forward to seeing, how they handle that issue. But you kind of get the feeling that it's just cool. There's a lot of people who are taking this moment to kind of tear things apart, but I think they went into it with that anyway, and we'll talk about that in another episode. But more or less, I wanted to get into that the first episode and the second episode, which was the real meat, the juicy part of everything, when they talked about Mike's gambling situation, we'll call it. He doesn't want to call it an addiction. And if you saw the clips of him with the sunglasses giving Ahmad Rashad, who is, by the way, the GOAT, in the poorly lit room with the sunglasses on, and Ahmad says, "Do you have a gambling problem?" And Mike hits him with the cheap mouth and says, no. And I swear, it is the least convincing Michael Jordan clip I've ever seen in my life. Like, that's a booking interview, okay? That's oh man, it was hilarious. It had me dying. Only other thing that had me dying more than that, I think, was Mike playing quarters with the security guard. That was great. That was great too. That man's an instant superstar. Sugar security guard. And I can't decide which one I want to put as the cover for this episode. And so when you see it, if I put up either one, just know it was a hard decision. If I didn't put up either one, know that I just couldn't pick one or the other, and I didn't want to jam the two things together because it's too great. Too great. Mike, I'm telling you, Mike looking like and I tweeted it out. Nobody's ever made the face that Mike made when Rashad asked him that question and then told the truth. Never. Not in the history of mankind ever. Nobody. And then Buddy hitting him with the shoulder shrug, and somebody else put it on out on social media that you got to be a cold-blooded killer to go ahead and hit Mike with his own move after busting him in some quarters. And again, just to highlight how bad it was, Mike was playing the security guard quarters for dollars and stuff. That's how much we wanted to gamble. Now, other things that I took away from it, Mike was in control of tickets. That was incredible. Randy Brown had to come in there and get some tickets from him, and Mike gave a couple and said, "Do you mind where they can sit?" And Randy Brown tells him, they could be sitting close to God for all I care. He said they could sit where? Randy says it again. Mike says, "Well, you just got tickets from God." Now, Mike, the next move here is my favorite because I swear what Mike said next is in the black man lexicon from here until the end of time. And Mike hit him with the long shit. Hands down, that was my favorite moment. It was a brief nothing. Nobody tweeted about it at all, but that just had me absolutely floored because all I could hear was my pops. That's it. I'm telling you, that's a generational thing. I'm pretty sure that we are programmed with it at birth, but it doesn't come out until we're about 18, 19, maybe even in our 20s when we get a little bit of upset in our lives. You got to get a little angry, a little salty at life before you can hit it real good with the right amount of shit. Oh man, that was great. It was a great moment, but more or less, the ultimate takeaway from this is that it's just been really good to relive all of the moments from both championship runs, and then find out some of the, again, put some footage and some clarity to some of the things that were going on, such as Mike's stance on getting active in politics, and that's opened up a big can of worms for a lot of people, because you juxtapose that with his gambling and the spiffy clean image that he was built up to be prior to those things coming out, and the scrutiny that current day superstars undergo. And I think it's funny because people, again, like I said, people don't put themselves in the proper context. Like, yeah, you could say that Mike didn't have anybody tweeting about him all the time, but they literally dropped a book about his gambling addiction in the middle of his playing career. Like, I'm not sure how much more. I'm talking about like an exposing tell-all type stuff, right? So there's scandal there, and I often say that, first of all, stop looking to athletes to be the spokesperson for the black community, first and foremost. But on top of that, and more importantly, if an athlete, or anybody for that matter, who is not in said career field, or in the career path of activism, if that's not what they do, their activism should be looked at as a much wanted and appreciated bonus. If they don't do it, I feel like shaming them for it. And then furthermore, some this is getting a little bit personal, but some other people are using that to detract from basketball accomplishments, which is what the GOAT discussion should always be about. Purely basketball. I don't understand why people try to spill it off in the off-court things. Well, I understand why, but it's not right. It's not right. It's wrong. But if they do those things, great. Appreciate those things, but don't expect it. That's all. That's as much as I can say about it, because anything else is being disingenuous. That's just the way I feel about it. Anybody, any and every single one, every single time. Whenever they do something, that's great. That's wonderful. If you choose not to, so freaking, I don't care. I really don't care. And that's not to say that you shouldn't or you should, actually. It's just a matter of, I didn't tune in for that. So like I said, if it happens, oh, that's cool. It's pretty dope. If you don't, that's not what I care about. And again, that's not what I'm using to determine who's the best at any given sport, period. Point blank. That's just the end all be all of it. Can't wait to see what happens in the next episodes, though. If the director can't believe what's going to be that Mike approved him, I can't wait to hear what's going on about it. A little tidbit that came out was that Mike had to cut back or remove the alcohol from his interviews because his mom saw it and got a little upset with him. So moms is watching and still getting mad about things, and that's pretty cool. So other NBA news, John Wall, remember him? Point guard from the Washington Wizards is anxious to return, said that he's on schedule to, and of course with everything shut down right now, looks like he can come back. He might be able to even sneak in before, if they found some way to finish out this year, which I doubt they're going to do, but next year he should be able to come back. And the big question I have is, he's going to be 30, right? But before that, in 2016, 2017, he was 23 and 10. Nobody in the NBA this year averaged 23 and 10. I take that back. LeBron averaged 23 and 10. One person did 25 and 10 for LeBron. Insane. But over the past two seasons, which was 73 games because he was having all those injury problems, which is, again, 73 games, 23, if I can get this right, over the last 73 games, he was 20 and 9. And only two people this past season had those numbers, and that, again, was Bron and Trae Young with 29 and 9. Incredible numbers as well. So my question really is, and what I'm kind of stuck on is, can Wall come back and be somewhere in between his past 2 years, where he's giving you 20 and 9, and that 16, 17, and really you want him to get to that 16, 17 and keep it there at that 23 and 10. I think that's attainable if he can bring up his shooting numbers. He was shooting right around his career averages, so it wasn't like he was doing anything spectacular. He's about 43 from the floor, 32 from 3-point, something along those lines. If he can get 3-point shots to be a little bit more consistent, it's possible that he can be 22 and I'm not sure he can keep up the 10 anymore. I mean, most of that's because he's gonna have to defer a lot, not defer, but he's gonna have more help in Bradley Beal. So Brad's gonna have the ball a lot more than I think he has in years past. So that's one to keep an eye on. The move, I don't know if there's any way they can possibly move. That contract is ridiculous. So nobody's trading for John Wall coming off of an Achilles injury in a lockdown season. Like there's every reason not to trade for him. So that's one, first and foremost. Second of all, though, I am interested to see what happens between he and Brad Beal. He came out, Wall did, speaking about how their relationship is actually really good. You know, there's a lot of talk of friction because of how the Wizards were losing and people calling John Wall a ball hog and this, that, and the third. Wall said when he got hurt, Beal was the first one to come and see him, would spend time with him when everybody else was out of town. He would come out to drive down to come and see him, which is a great story, and I'm sure he did. Doesn't mean much for them playing together. People can be friends and still not want to work together. That's just a fact of life. And this is no different, especially when you saw the talks of Brad Beal being traded. So while if it's probably in the Wizards' best bet to try to keep everybody as much as they can. I'm not sure what they're going to get out of it, but they can get Wall again somewhere between that 23-10 and 20-9. So 21, 22 and 9. Even if he goes down to 8, that's still really good with what you're getting from Brad Beal, who gave you 30 points this year. Like, good stuff, right? A lot of good numbers going around. It's kind of interesting though, because you do wonder. They were not really overcoming the hump as it was, right? So to run it back for the sake of running it back because you can't really do much else, does that really make sense? So do they still move Brad Beal even if Wall comes back? It's a lot to watch out for the Washington Wizards this upcoming or the rest of the season, whatever happens, whenever we come back and start playing NBA games again. Close out the NBA portion with a little tidbit on Tom Thibodeau. Former Bulls coach is said to be in hot demand from the Brooklyn Nets, New York Knicks, and the Houston Rockets. Now, 2 of those teams make sense. The third one is not one of these things. It's not like the other. Okay, sorry. Had to do it. Got kids. That's how it goes. Brooklyn makes sense because, you know, it's the Nets that got KD and Kyrie. They said they want a superstar familiar coach, and Thibs is, I don't know if I'd call him a superstar familiar coach, but he's definitely a guy who is familiar with big personalities. Now, I'm not sure that you got 2 injury-prone guys in Kyrie and KD if you want to give them Tom Thibodeau. So, no. The Knicks, they don't even know what they want to be. I can see him going there just because that would be, you know, he's a good coach, and they don't know what they're going to be. So there's not really a roster style or set situation going on. There's nobody that I think that they're really enamored with. Mitchell Robinson's a really good player, but are they enamored with him? I doubt it. Kevin Knox, not really. RJ Barrett, obviously, but where do they see him? Where would Tom Thibodeau see him? And again, do you want to run him into the ground? Because Thibs is gonna play these guys 40 plus minutes. That's just how he does. Everywhere that's just what it is. So I'm not sure that's a good fit there. And then the surprise is Houston. Why is that a surprise? Well, because they still have Mike D'Antoni as their head coach, and while it does seem odd on the surface, the report is that this is a contingency plan. What they plan on doing if talks with D'Antoni break down. Now, we had talked about this a few weeks back when the whole mess was going on with Daryl Morey in China and all that stuff, which is still going on. But about D'Antoni could be on the outs because he's really not that great. Okay, he's a very good scheme. He's the offensive version of Thibodeau, honestly, where he can do one thing really well, but he doesn't balance out the rest of his team that great, so it shows. Well, he could be on the outs, and I know they're talking about working with an extension, but if they're talking about getting that rebuild like they were rumored to be seeking with Tillman Fertitta and all the attempts they were making to get underneath the salary cap or the inquisitions they were making about it, inquiries about ways that they can get under, look out for Tom Thibodeau to the Rockets, and if not, maybe they bring him in to coach Russ. That'd be cool. I don't know about him and James, but him and Russ would get along great. That'd be cool. Yeah, I don't know how that's all going to work out, but just the few teams that were rumored to be looking at former Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau. So, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to switch gears and talk about the NFL, mostly how they're going to be staying very home. It's going to be a lot of home games, quote unquote, this season, and a player who thought that he was doing saying all the right things is proving that sometimes it's just not that simple. Back in a moment. Triple Zeros. Back now on 000, switching gears to the NFL, and the NFL announced that they will not be playing any international games this year. Obviously, with COVID-19 threatening, honestly, to push the season back. Although right now it is scheduled to start on time, traveling overseas is just not a very feasible idea. They've already that was kind of a telegraphed decision. I don't know how many people didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't see them doing it. One player I saw that was upset about it. Not many players really want to go, so that was surprised to even see one player be upset. But yeah, it was kind of a shock to see them announce it now. But the schedule is going to be coming out next week, so they had to say something. So I guess it's not a total shock. It is a little disheartening because it's nice those one-off Sunday mornings where you got to wake up at like 8:00 in the morning to get up to watch the game. I mean, it's a little cool. I'm not gonna front. I do it every single time. So I enjoy it. But that's definitely something that's not the best of signs, is it? It can't be. Another interesting little tidbit NFL before we get to our big NFL story is Cam Newton still a free agent. Former quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton, obviously still floating around in free agency. A lot of the teams that he was rumored to be linked. I think the other thing that you have to look at is he could have gone to Pittsburgh. They still need a backup, and Ben Roethlisberger's coming off with a elbow injury, and while that's true, there's another roadblock that I'm gonna have to get to in a moment. I kind of jumped the gun there. I should have pushed that out for a second, but maybe I'll just use this as my nice little teaser setup for how I'll close this. Another team though, and one that could still do something, would be New England. And now Asante Samuel tweeted out that he's not a Bill Belichick kind of guy, and that may be true, but I don't think anybody would have said that Randy Moss was a Bill Belichick kind of guy. And maybe it's because Randy Moss was troubled more than injured. So this is a physical breakdown kind of thing. That's kind of the issue here. Of course, from the quarterback position, it's a different kind of criteria because of the expectations from that guy to be consistent as always, or always be consistent as possible. I'm not sure you're going to get that from Cam. No matter, even on his best, he's not the most consistent of quarterbacks. So, at this point, Cam's better off waiting for an injury. I'm not sure what his stance is on him wanting to take it back. I see a lot of people tweeting out of Dalton would have been more willing. It might be that way. Andy Dalton did sign with the Dallas Cowboys to be the backup to Dak Prescott on what seems to be a pretty team-friendly deal. But I just don't know exactly where Cam is mentally. Even maybe he's not necessarily ready to come. He said he was ready. He said he got cut loose from the Panthers, and they betrayed him. They didn't believe him. Blah blah blah. And tweeted all that stuff, and probably not the best move when you're going to be seeking work. But whatever. This again, Cam. My two favorite players in the NBA and the NFL are Russell Westbrook and Cam Newton. The two weirdest dressed dudes in both sports, but the two freaks of nature in their own right. Cam being free is a little bit personal, but I also understand that, or I don't want to say understand, but I also don't think that it's going to last for long. I think that if he wanted to go get a job, he could definitely find one right now. I think he's waiting for the best opportunity for him when he's healthiest, and maybe he is waiting for a chance to go out there and start. I wouldn't fault him. I just don't know that, so I'm not comfortable saying that he's waiting for that and not willing to take a backup job at this point. So there's that. Now I mentioned it, I teased a little bit, but I gotta close out with Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver JuJu Smith-Schuster reportedly will not be signed back. The Athletic's Ed Bouchette says that he and running back James Conner could both be allowed to walk after this season, with Pittsburgh eyeing a full-on rebuild. Again, Roethlisberger is 37 years old and coming off that long injury and has flirted with retirement in the past. Now, go over some of the numbers with JuJu here. Rookie season, 58 catches, 917 yards, 7 touchdowns. His sophomore year, 111 catches, 1,426 yards, 7 touchdowns. Last year, though, 42 catches, 552 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, obviously, last year he didn't have Ben. He had a bunch of other random young guys, including some dude named Duck. And while all that was happening, apparently his value was plummeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the thing that's interesting to me about this is JuJu is 23 right now. He's very young. He was the youngest guy in his draft class. If you're a team that's eyeing a rebuild, you want cornerstone players. I'm not sure how a young player like JuJu, who has shown he can be dynamic, isn't necessarily a guy you want to try to lock up now. He had a down year, so you're not going to have to pay him premium money, I wouldn't imagine. Unless they feel like they can get more back in return for him, then it would be worth to keep him while they try to develop, or that he's going to add too many wins to it. I'm not sure. One thing of note about him, though, is that he did double his drop rate over the past couple of years. From 2018 to 2019, it went from 3.6 to 7.1. So that's something else that they could take to the table and say, look, man, we want to keep you in Pittsburgh, but we can't pay you top dollar. You had the down year. Now, despite having the backup quarterbacks, you didn't necessarily blah, blah, blah. Like, teams have been doing it for decades. So to come out with, it's a weird non-Pittsburgh Steeler type move to come out with this so early. But we'll see how it all plays out as far as that. Now, the other interesting part about this, and what really drew me to the story about them saying that JuJu might not come back, is the whole Antonio Brown saga. And what made it the story that it was on the way on AB's way out the door, he was spraying the room, right? He kind of took shots at everybody, including JuJu, and took a offense, kind of bristled at a picture that JuJu had posted. I believe it was on Instagram, of him catching the pass from Ben and saying that he's lucky to catch passes from a quarterback like that, and this, that, and the third. And it's funny that this is where the situation is now, right? I know AB had to hear, like, oh really? Like he had to have probably hit him with the classic, just face, because that's full circle. That's watch how fast it can come to you now. Granted, this is all rumors, nothing substantiated whatsoever. Early in the offseason, this could be part of the negotiating tactics to drive his price down a little bit. He wants to stay, young guy, loves the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. It's still funny. It's still funny as hell because, ooh, boy, watch how much just it's still a business. So just be a lesson to all the young guys before you go out there praising the organization in these professional sports leagues. Remember, the moment that you become more valuable to them as well, you're always a commodity. But the moment you become more valuable as a trade piece or a bargaining chip than you are as an actual asset on the field, gone, son. There's very rarely an opportunity for redemption to change that opinion. So I like JuJu. I'm a fan of JuJu Smith-Schuster, but that was funny. I found it absolutely hilarious because, again, it was a lot of hey, subtle back and forth. It seemed like subtle stuff. Now, it could have been nothing, and everybody was praising JuJu for taking the high road. I kind of feel like he was taking digs, like not necessarily overt and not necessarily inappropriate. Kind of, AB was coming at him. JuJu was giving him some subtle clapbacks, so don't act like he was completely innocent in this. So that was my take on that. Again, we'll see what happens, unsubstantiated yet. But if he does get moved, that brings to us our next little topic here. Where does he go? So, one of the ones that's been bandied about a lot is the Green Bay Packers, but I just don't see them making a major move for another wide receiver. That could be the Bears fan in me talking, but I don't see them swinging the deal like that for that. Now, they did draft a quarterback with their first pick and then took a running back, so who knows? They out there doing anything right about now. Gutekunst and LaFleur are flying by the seat of their pants. But other places that I was looking at that could possibly use some infusions for Sam Darnold. He needs a weapon. That if I'm the Jets, I would look into that. They made a smart move. I had a good draft, right? We'll say that for them. They had a good draft. That would be a solid trade. The Giants, that would be a good move. There's not many. There's really not many. Maybe Philly keeps him in Pennsylvania. I just don't know exactly where. I have to look into that a little bit more. Look deep down into the numbers of where I could see JuJu exactly fitting because, again, it's not necessarily just the teams that need him, but who's also going to give up something for a guy who clearly played better when he had somebody playing opposite of him, right? You can say it was a down year with the backup quarterbacks, but he also didn't have AB, so like some of that has to have been a factor as well. I mean, he'll fetch something back, but I just don't think it'll be exactly what they think it would be as terms of. I don't think it'll be anything substantial, right? I think it'll be a mid round at best. I don't know. I'm not. It's hard to evaluate now, not knowing exactly where I think he would go. I mean, again, I find it hard to find because I've always thought that he was a complimentary receiver. And I actually said when he and AB did that commercial where AB showed him the dance that it was going to be a problem. But I think JuJu was a complimentary receiver. So, and I think other teams might think that as well. He might just end up hitting the free agency market, which is wild to think about with how bright his star was when he burst onto the scene to how quickly it could turn around and be the where it is now. So that's just one thing to keep an eye on and something that we're going to have to monitor going forward. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to check out the stuff, man. PippinAintEasy.com just wrote out about how the Bulls roster does not have to be a hindrance to the good vibes that they have with all the good news. Everybody could be down because the Bulls will still have the same players next year. Yeah, more than likely, most of those guys are going to be back next year, but it's okay. Read why it's okay. PippinAintEasy.com. And last word on pro football, I just talked about the Chicago Bears and what their plan is, and I'm going to be writing out about what they can do now and the expectations from going forward. So be sure to be on the lookout for that one. Also check out Clocker Sports for all of the latest pieces from all the authors there. Man, I am having a hard time closing this bad boy. I don't want to leave. But check me out on Twitter as well as always. Josh E. Bucket with the Facebook page Clocker Sports. Hit up the website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Until the very next time, I think y'all know what it is. That right there is the sound of the horns.